All right, guys, welcome to the annual NSMA Convergence Summit. I'm Daron Vaught, as Dave and Wes said. Kevin Fishbain of The Athletic covers the Chicago Bears is with us. Larry Williams of Tiger Illustrated will join us shortly. Covering games in a digital era. Kevin, I don't want to trample over anything if you maybe had some thoughts prepared prior to this, but generally speaking, maybe it will help to start with just kind of like a primer and like some pros and cons, because you're somebody who kind of came up in a student of the old world, I know, right? But covered games for The Athletic in a way that is new and contemporary. So maybe like pros, cons. What's different about your job now compared to, what it would have been in the before times, or however far back you want to put it, and what's better, what's worse?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks everybody for being here. Again, to echo what Dave and Wes said, it's an incredible event, and glad we get to do this, and honored to get to blab about covering games, because so many of us get into this to be at the game, right? To tell that story from the game. Here we go. We got
Here he is, Larry Williams, everybody.
Dabo Swinney's late for his press conference.
Yeah, right. If he can do it, so can you. Wait,
I read the wrong thing on the app.
No,
so
you're good.
I
I'm
apologize.
wondering if we should get you a mic, or maybe you guys can just pass that one.
Yeah.
I mean, there are four.
You can just pass it.
Yeah, I don't want to mess. We had
we got
a
it.
feedback issue on the first try there. All right, so we've got help. All right, so you will have a microphone shortly. Excellent.
Sorry, y'all. I read the wrong.
Check.
I got a different time on the app.
All good. Appreciate you being here. All right,
Thank you, sir.
so we were just getting started with Kevin, and I was asking about the differences and maybe pros and cons from the before times, I'll call them, to covering games now in a more digital world.
When I started at The Athletic in 2017, and for those of you who subscribe or follow, The Athletic is, when I started, I was I was our second NFL hire there. And, maybe we were a 60-person operation, and obviously now I think it's 600 people. And at the time, they wanted, it was, don't go write the gamer. Don't go write a game story. It was take your time in the locker room, take your time at the press conference. You write something for Monday morning that nobody else is going to have, because our job is to find subscribers and get people to pay to read The Athletic. So take advantage of the fact that we don't have a print deadline. So, and I got started in print, but it was both. I would be sitting there in the Lambeau Field press box as the Bears were losing by 40, and filing a story at the buzzer, and then I'd go down in the locker room, get my quotes, and then I'd write a longer story that would go on the web. So at The Athletic, we kind of, and then it evolved. It's like, okay, we've got a lot of subscribers now, and we've realized people want to read something about the game pretty immediately. So now what we do, and I see my guy James Boyd is here, Colts writer, so he knows. So what we do now is we do a little bit of a mix. So we do file a story at the buzzer, and what we have editors who kind of write the general frame of it, the skeleton, if you will, and then we're asked, hey, give us like a 300-word takeaway. And then that way they can get that up on the app immediately. So somebody if you're a fan of the team, you can go read that story right away. Well, we're in the locker room at the press conferences, and then you can kind of spend your time and get a longer thought out column to run that night, and then and things for the next day. But what's funny is it's similar still to the old school days. If anybody remembers that Bears-Bengals game this year, where it was back and forth in the last 2 minutes. And there was like 6 minutes left in the game, and the Bears were actually up 2 scores. And I got a note over Slack that said, hey, can you send over your 300-word takeaway? And I was like, no, because have you seen the defenses that are out here today? Like, this thing is not over. And it literally, so I used the 2-minute warning to write 3 separate takeaways. I had Bears lose, it's a calamity, a special teams disaster. Cannot believe the Bears pulled this one out. They escaped Cincinnati. And then something else that was kind of a general, no matter what happens in the game, you can use this as kind of an extra thing, like the rookie running back had a good game. And lo and behold, Caleb Williams has Colson Loveland for a 54-yard touchdown with 18 seconds left, and I'm frantically trying to get something ready, just like you would do in the old newspapers days. And then thankfully Joe Flacco's Hail Mary fell short because I was not ready for another one. But that's the story I always tell too, really quick. But before you guys all remember the Jaden Daniels Hail Mary against the Bears in Washington. I'm sitting with my two colleagues, and the Bears had just taken the lead, and one writer goes, "Hey, my takeaway is going to be about so-and-so." The other guy goes, "I'm going to talk about the defense." And they go look at me, they go, "What's your takeaway?" And be like, "I'm going to be about how the Bears find a way to blow this in the last 12 seconds. A little gallows humor in the press box. For those of you who've been in there, we do that a lot. And at that time, the Bears had gone a long time without making the playoffs. Lo and behold, the Hail Mary happens. And, the building shakes and you're trying to... So my long answer, Daron, is I think that we have found that newspaper practices still matter because in the digital era, we realize fans want to read about the game immediately on their phones. So we want to give them our thoughts from the press box immediately, and then a column that'll come up maybe 3-4 hours later, and then something that maybe is up Monday morning. Oh, and then we're going to watch the film of the game, and that's going to be up on Tuesday or Wednesday. So it's a lot, and we can get into this too. Now we do video. So and we're shooting 60-second video clips that also are part of our game coverage. So it's a lot of stuff, but I think the immediacy is still important.
Yeah, it's so interesting hearing your perspective on it. And in our case, I'm a former newspaper guy. I was in newspapers for 10 years. Got my start down the road in High Point in the late 90s at the High Point Enterprise newspaper, and worked for the Charleston Post and Courier newspaper more recently, but still in the distant past, back until 2008. And then I switched over to what was then the rivals Clemson website, TigerIllustrated.com. We're now with it's under the On3 umbrella. But one of the first lessons that I learned was, in the newspaper sort of way of thinking, the game is the biggest event of the week, and so it's blowout coverage, game stories, sidebar, notebook, grades, all this other stuff. That's what I'm programmed to do. And my boss is like, no, the game is arguably the least important event of the week. Because everybody's watching the game, they can see what happened. Not that they don't want your take or they don't want the most important info or nuggets to come out of the game, but just from the perspective of the common sort of routine of all the different assignments that I just mentioned. And so I sort of fast forward to now. Really, my post game is predicated on how long it takes the head coach, Dabo Swinney, to go from the final whistle when the clock hits 0 to the time he actually steps in front of a microphone is often 2 hours. So you can forget about like the 10-minute cooling off period, 15-minute. Like he goes and talks. Well, first they have a on-field gathering at the Paul deal where they let fans come onto the field and they get to rub elbows with the players and coaches, and that's great. They do the alma mater. Then he goes in and speaks with his team, and he never has a brief message with anybody, let alone his team. So then he talks to recruits. Then he showers, gets dressed up, and then finally comes and talks to us. And so I had to come up with an efficient way to attack that. And so our routine right now, the formula that I sort of developed over the recent years was we have a sort of an intern network in which I train college kids at Clemson University. Like, here's the AP style. Here's how you build a story. And it's very difficult, and there's an art and a craft to it. And so the assignment for the intern, whether it's basketball, football, is within 15 minutes after the game, after the final buzzer, is sending in an immediate story that we can put on our front page. My job is right when the game's over, whether it's a blowout or a close game, is I write my immediate column on the game, which It usually takes me about a half hour, 35, 40 minutes, and then that gets posted a little sometime thereafter as I'm making my way down to the press conference. And then at the actual press conference, there's news, whether it's an injury or whether it's something Dabo Swinney says, which he always says something interesting. And so that's what I use. That's where we use our message board, which I think that the Team Theme website network really was at the forefront of providing that community where fans can congregate. And we've been in existence for 26, 27 years. And so we have thousands and thousands of subscribers who, it's like a bar, really, and we're the bartenders. And that doesn't mean that we pump sunshine all the time. It doesn't mean that we're, constantly critical. I think fans, what I've learned since I left the newspaper business and really interacting with fans every day, is that, they don't want you unmercifully ripping their team, but they also don't want constant sunshine either. They want the truth. And so I'm lucky enough to have been covering them for quite a long time. And so my job and I'm sort of straying from the actual game coverage, but when I wake up every morning, my job is, what can I give each of my subscribers that they can't get anywhere else, to where they feel like that's the best $10 a month that I spend. And I think that's very similar to your mission. But really my job is to give them the news, give them stuff they can't get anywhere else, give it to them first. And that requires relationships, and that's a whole other topic probably.
Yeah.
So.
Really quick, we're trying to get Ben Johnson to come to go to his press conferences later. He comes
too early.
There were multiple road games this year where there were 2 reporters at his press conference, because he goes right away and everyone goes to the locker room, and then he's up and I remember sitting in there after a loss, and it's me and one other reporter, and he's pissed, understandably. And he gave these, and he's really respectful, but he gave some short answers. And when you give a short answer, you're like, okay, go my notebook. Can you help me out here? And there's nobody else in the room, and we can't let him off the hook, because if he goes because then you hear from the rest of the beat, right? Because if he goes and leaves and he didn't, and then you go back and they go, oh, did you guys ask him about this guy got hurt? Did you ask about this play? We're like, there were 2 of us, and. So yeah, it's so funny to hear. I mean, I could not even imagine that. 2 hours, wow.
Well, the positive is I'm able to get a lot of work done.
That's true.
We have a coworker and the other guy who helps analyze the team, and he's mainly a recruiting writer, but he pitches in for game coverage, of course. We want our readers to have something first thing every Sunday morning, and so we have a round table, basically, your deeper thoughts on what you just saw. And so I will have, by the time Dabo Swinney wraps up his press conference, I will have my game column done and my Sunday morning roundtable done. And so usually by the time he finishes his press conference, I'm closing my laptop and headed home to watch games for fun. So.
Yeah. I've got a couple of follow-ups. The first is regarding access. In the transition of times, again, it's not binary, but we're going to talk about it almost as if it is. Then and now, how has the digital era affected your guys' access to a Dabo, a Ben Johnson?
Yeah, for game purposes, it hasn't changed a ton. I think that you have different. For one thing, sometimes what's really fun after games is every once in a while, you can show a player something on your phone, if something's gone viral.
Yeah.
Actually, this is an interesting one from this year. Everyone probably remembers Ben Johnson taking his shirt off after the Bears beat the Eagles in the locker room. He did his press conference after he had done that, but we didn't know he had done that, and it hadn't gotten posted anywhere yet. So we're in there, we're asking him questions, after they beat the Eagles. We go back to the locker room, and suddenly everyone's phone's buzzing, and we see what he did. And and that was a Friday game. We didn't get to ask him about it, I think, till Tuesday in the news cycle. So it's interesting. So the digital, so there's some quirks there. From an access standpoint, I think that players And Larry, you could speak to this a little better, I'm sure. Well, it's obviously different with college football because you guys don't get the locker room access. But I think that players, there's a gap in terms of understanding what we do. And so there's a lot, especially from college. These guys come from college and they're like, what do you mean I'm getting dressed and all these people are standing behind me waiting for me?
Right.
It's tough. And if people follow the news, there's been some debates among the NFLPA. Some players want us completely out of locker rooms after, which is just, it's never going to happen, because the second we decide to say, oh yeah, just meet us out in the hallway, they all find the secret exit door and we're not going to talk to anybody. So it's a bit of a challenge. The games are actually a little easier because I think for the most part, everybody understands game just happened. They're all here. What I really appreciate for road games is there are certain players that will respect and acknowledge, hey, your company traveled you here. Like, you came all the way here to cover us. And those you really appreciate those because those people respect it. But it's tough. And you've also got, while newspapers are unfortunately shrinking, social media and other outlets are growing. So, look, we do it too. Even at The Athletic, I'm sometimes flipping my phone up and recording an interview, but you also got a lot of different outlets that are just a little unfamiliar and a little different in the locker room. So you're kind of competing there. But it's changed a little bit. Luckily, game access is for the most part the same. I think that as the years keep going, the understanding of like what it is that we do continues to be a little bit lost for these guys. Now if you're in college, never picked up a newspaper. I don't know how many of those guys ever even opened The Athletic. So what they see stuff that gets posted on Instagram or on TikTok or on Twitter, or stuff gets sent to them that are just snippets without context, and you have to kind of compete with that and battle with that. But yeah, and the other thing too, and I think coaches and players understand this, is in today's age, you say something at the podium, that 10-second clip might be taken and spread like wildfire. And we had an issue with Justin Fields a few years ago where he said something after a game. He said something like that something came easy to him. And he didn't mean it in like, we all who were sitting there understood what he meant because it was a flow of the questions that led to that answer. But that one snippet got taken and spread on social media, and everybody just ripped him for, this guy thinks like he has no idea what he's coming into. This is like, he's being too cocky, all this stuff. And then he got upset with us. Like it was our fault.
Right.
And it's like, so we have to it's tough. You got to battle with that. And I think what I've learned sometimes is, as far as live tweeting goes, I try to keep it to just injuries. And then take a breath afterwards, and maybe if somebody says something interesting, noteworthy, I will kind of do a longer note or use it in my story.
We have plenty of player access after games. The issue is it's so managed, and everything's podium style, and there's so much, you can feel the pressure on those players, because this is probably where it differs from the NFL, where Justin Fields at that level, he's a pro, where I guess you could argue college players are pros now too, but it's kind of like, hey man, it's your ass, Whereas in college, I know plenty of coaches, and especially Dabo, they put so much into, don't say the wrong thing. Here's what you say, keep it positive, nothing negative, all this stuff. And so you can just feel sort of the tension as they're like, oh gosh, how do I respond to that question? I don't want to, say the wrong thing and get coach mad at me or get Twitter mad at me or whatever the platform is. In general, it pains me to say this, but I don't really put a lot of effort myself into going to press conferences with players. I let others handle that. That's more of the nuts and bolts, the base covering, so to speak.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm more focused on, okay, what's really the nature of this quarterback's ankle injury, that type of thing, the stuff that people are asking about. They're not asking, hey, what did the quarterback say about the upcoming opponent, And so I try to be as efficient as I can in thinking, what do my customers want to read? Do they want to read me regurgitating an interview with a running back? Probably not. They want me to tell them, how they really feel about this matchup, behind the scenes. I'm just so much more of a news guy, kind of aspiring to be the authority on what you cover. And I hate it because 20, 30 years ago, you were developing relationships with those players. And there was give and take, like, hey, man, I didn't know you were going to write that, And she's like, oh, well, should I have, pick my battles there and maybe realize that if I would have, been a little more understanding about a kid, what a kid says in the heat of the moment, that kind of thing. But you just don't have that one-to-one, one-on-one, those opportunities anymore. So at least in my case, I have to handle things, the news gathering more behind the scenes with my network of sources and things I've built up over the years.
Yeah, that's all good stuff. I'm going to switch directions one more time before maybe we'll open it up for questions. You guys have both mentioned video, Twitter, things that are not simply writing about the game. Talk us through the evolution of that for both of you, and how do you prioritize, right? Like if it's a pie chart, right? The story is the story. You want to write the story for the game, but you have these other obligations. And Kevin, I know the video is kind of a new piece for you guys.
Yeah, my company would rightly tell me to prioritize what I'm writing in the video and social media aside.
Yeah.
Twitter's not paying me to cover the game.
Right.
And I'm on Blue Sky too. So like I'm kind of cross posting, and like Instagram, you got that element as well. So I try, and we have a live blog during games. So that's another element of, and our live blogs do really well because again, it goes back to when you're watching your team play, you're on your phone. And for a lot of people at home, like you were checking social media, and and you're going and you want to see this live blog, you want to see what people are saying. So I've tried to prioritize the live blog a little bit and not tweet as much as I did. There was I never liked tweeting play-by-play. Just give your thought. And again, I'm here. I'm in the building. I can see that this safety jumped. Or I can see that this guy on the sideline had a fun celebration. Try to take advantage of where you're at. But yeah, this past year, The Athletic incorporated more video. So after games, so what I've been trying to do is after all the press conference and locker room stuff's done, and again, this is why it's great to not have the newspaper deadlines of the old days, is I go on the field or in like an empty suite, and I will record a 90-second video, and then they can and those can go on Instagram, and those can get up on our story pages. Because again, we found that readers like to see a little 1-minute clip. And again, it's the crass phrase, but it's adapt or die. It's just like I think that I did video earlier in my career, and then I'd like, oh great, I don't have to do video anymore. And it's like, hey, we're gonna start doing video. It's like, okay, you guys, let's do it. And help me out and tell me what you want. And they tell us, you're there. You tell us what you saw, what you heard, and it takes advantage of us sending you to these games. So it's a lot, though, when you balance all those different social media platforms, and then again what you're writing. And I would always earlier in my career, I really relied on Twitter a ton because I wanted to build an audience, and it was fun. I don't think Twitter's as fun as it used to be. Right. We won't have to get into that.
Here.
But now I'm very grateful that I think I have a decent sized audience. But again, the people who subscribe to The Athletic, that's my audience. That's who I got to cater to. So that has allowed me. It's actually been a little bit easier during games because I'm also. We didn't even talk about this. I'm taking frantic notes during games. I have a note on every play. I have a spreadsheet that I keep where I'm keeping who's on the field for every play, and I'm tabulating yardage and stuff like that because I need that for my own knowledge as the season goes along. I've got a second screen up sometimes during games. So there's so much going on, but you have to meet the audience where they're at. And if the audience wants to watch a video, great. If they want to read the 300-word takeaway, fine. I know they're going to read my column 4 hours after the game. I'm confident that, and my hope always is, and this stuff goes back a long ways, my hope is, okay, if you're going to watch my video that took me 90 seconds to film and maybe a half hour to edit, I'm hopeful that you will sit down and read the 1,500 word column that really I believe is my bread and butter. It's why The Athletic brought me in the first place. That's what I love to do. And my hope is I'll do all this other stuff to bring you in, and then hopefully you'll stick around and you'll read that.
Yeah. Zero video. We tried it years ago and just found that it did nothing for us monetarily as far as what people were interested in.
Yeah. I'm glad, by the way, Kevin mentioned the live blog, because that seems to me akin to the message board.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And so Twitter, no. I'm like, so our philosophy is pretty simple. Why would, if I'm posting play-by-play on Twitter and all of my deepest thoughts about the game, subscribers are going to say, wait, well, I might as well not even spend this money. And so our in-game threads, which sounds exactly like your live blog, I mean, they're tremendously popular during the games. They're crazy. They are just bonkers with people just overreacting. A quick side story, this just popped into my head. Hunter Renfrow, who was the receiver who caught the touchdown pass from Deshaun Watson in the national championship game in January of 2017. Clemson was down 14-0 in that game, I believe, in the first half. So naturally, fans are going crazy, fire the coach, this and that, in the national championship game. A year later, as Clemson was getting ready for their next playoff appearance, during one of their media days for the semifinal, I was talking to Hunter Renfrow, and he goes, "Hey, you're with Tiger Illustrated, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh yeah, we like your subscribers. We call your subscribers page niners." And what that means is in the middle of that Alabama, they went back and looked, like after winning the national championship, they went back and looked at all the hysteria in the middle of that game, and it was on page 9 of the thread when people were like, "Dabo sucks, and we're gonna get blown out, and this is hopeless." Anyway, so that's just the circus, and I distinctly remember when in my newspaper days with the Post and Courier, I'm covering Clemson, maybe halftime of a basketball game, and I'm on my computer and I'm looking at one of the message boards, just seeing what people were saying, and another newspaper guy, who I won't name, said, "Ooh, you read message boards?" And I'm like, well, I kind of want to see what they're saying, and so there are many pros and cons of what we do in 2026, but I think it's allowed me and other folks, like, get off your ivory tower and stop looking down your noses at the people who are paying your salary. They're your customers. Yeah. So anyway, Twitter, no way. I mean, the only what my sort of routine is before the game, I'll post a link to our in-game thread and say, "Hey, come join the party, join the circus. We're gonna get crazy." And then maybe at halftime, I'll have maybe say something about the game on Twitter, but while still linking to the in-game thread, and so still trying to direct people to that. But to Kevin's point, Twitter is not nearly what it was. I mean, it's just a wasteland of bots and engineered kind of just. I don't know. I'm healthier. My mental health is better when I'm not on it, just in general. And I'm thankful that our business model doesn't require us to be on it a lot. Now, that's not to say that's just our business model. So if you're trying to get a foothold in whatever outlet you're with, or if your model is more the free. The free side of things, then yeah, it makes a heck of a lot more sense to spend a heck of a lot of time on Twitter. So I'm just saying what fits us and our model.
Yeah, very good stuff. I'm going to open it up to questions. I don't know how exactly we're going to do this. We have another microphone, so if we can maybe trust you guys to pass the microphone responsibly, and that'll keep me from running around. Not that I mind.
I can talk loud.
We do. I mean, typically at these things, we do have rooms full of loud talkers, but I think for the posterity of it being the video here, we can. We'll get you next, Brendan.
Larry, I'm curious about the Dabo 2-hour nonsense.
Yeah.
Have you discussed that with the Clemson people? Has the Football Writers Association gotten involved with that? That just seems totally unacceptable, and it's bullshit. It really is.
He's about to start his 18th season, so That's the way he's.
Well, but even so, that's
No. What I'm saying, it's been going on a long time.
Right.
And so there have been conversations. There has been frustration conveyed. He's going to do it how he wants to do it. He's going to. I'm not saying I agree with it at all. But no, that's not going to.
And nobody's big enough to stand up to him.
No, you mean in the administration, people
Yeah.
above him? No. I think the administration is more worried about season tickets, and like right now they're more worried about, oh gosh, are we going to lose 6 games again this year? Rather than is Dabo going to show up within a certain time frame? Again, I don't like it.
I mean, is there an ACC rule about locker room access? I mean, obviously there's no locker room access, but when the cooling off period or whatever that a coach is supposed to appear.
What is it? 15 minutes? I don't know what 10. Yeah. I mean, and is that adhered to pretty roughly?
Varies by the school, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think it's a function of where college athletics is. That the coaches, successful coaches, they don't have a boss. They're the presidents of campus. They're campus kings. Mm. And that's not. I'm just calling it like it is. So no, I mean as long as they're winning, as long as things are good, and honestly, I think if they start losing, I think that'll be the last thing that administrator types preoccupy themselves with. Does that answer your question?
I mean, it does. It's unacceptable.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
It's completely. I mean, I can't imagine Jim Phillips. When Dabo, you got to do it. I mean, this is the way and especially where the ACC is, in the pecking order of things. We need you out front, and we need it right away. Yeah. And I mean, that's just not being understanding of where you are. All due respect to your national championships and whatever. Yeah. It's not where you are in the pecking order right now. You got to sell your team. You got to sell the ACC. There's a lot of stuff that's going on, and that should be happening in a timely manner, not on your time.
Yeah, I don't disagree. No. But it's not.
Let's go to Brendan up here. Right. Yeah.
Thanks for doing this, guys. You've kind of touched on some of these topics, but since the topic of your discussion is covering games in the digital era, I think maybe framing some of this would be interesting. Barriers to entry in our industry have never been lower. Anybody can have a WordPress site, anybody can have a YouTube channel or an X account or whatever, but there's still a finite pool of advertising dollars to be spread across wherever people are putting their content. And if the concept is, hey, we're trying to make a living, obviously you're trying to stand out. When you have a Twitter account, you don't own your Twitter account. You operate a channel on their account. When you have a YouTube channel, you are agreeing to be on their platform. You don't own the content there. And so I'm curious, like from your perspectives, there's a lot of stuff that you can't control. You are catered to your subscriber base with The Athletic, with On3. How are you measuring whether or not your stuff is successful? Is it just, hey, we have more subscribers this month than we had last month? How are you measuring your impact on the engagement that The Athletic is generating on your Bears coverage, or that On3 is generating because of your On3 coverage? Because there's plenty of places you can give stuff away for free that won't monetize for those companies, but still may be worthwhile to put out there. How do you balance all of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. In some ways, it's an impossible question because you laid it out. Like, I mean, in terms of intellectual property, it's hard to have things. We all have our own metrics. Like at The Athletic, like I'm able to see certain things on a dashboard about certain numbers of things that would tell me how a story is quote unquote doing, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was a good story or a bad story. And it could get. And I've put hours into one story that got X number of views, and 1 hour into a story that got X times 10. It's actually one thing what was fun about the Bears season last year, obviously they were winning, but they were winning in such dramatic fashion that those stories really took on a life of their own. I've always said that you either want to cover a dumpster fire or a winner. You do not want to cover the 8-8 team. And I've had seasons where the games they lost in horrible fashion, those stories got engaged with at a much higher level than when after a 3-game losing streak, because they'd win a game and I'm like, oh, they finally won. I can go break down this touchdown with these players in the locker room. I'm so great. This is more fun than like, this guy should be fired, this guy should be cut, this guy should be traded. And nobody read that story. So it's tough. You know, you in Chicago, I'm competing with the Tribune, the Sun-Times, which are still absolute juggernauts and robust staffs. I'm competing with brand new YouTube channels that have writers. I'm competing with people that just bring their phones to games and are posting stuff on Instagram and YouTube. So it's an interesting competitive world. But I think the one thing, and Larry, I assume it's similar with you, and you kind of mentioned this, it's your subscribers. These are the people that are already, so I'm just kind of hopeful and trusting that these people already subscribe, and we're so grateful at The Athletic that we have such a strong base that like those people are going to read no matter what. A certain segment of them are going to read no matter what, and I just kind of have to keep relying on that. But yeah, you got to keep, and that's why probably one of the reasons we're doing video as a way to bring in more eyeballs. And one of the reasons I'm trying to be more active on Instagram, for example, because then I can use to use your language, Instagram's channel that I am using, and you're right about that, to bring more eyeballs, because you're just trying to get more, and you hope that if I bring 2,000 people look at this Instagram story that I posted, maybe 17 of them will click my story.
Just to quickly follow up on that before I interrupt you, Larry, do you have like conversion metrics where, hey, if 2,000 people saw the thing you put on Instagram and that turns into 10 new subscribers, you know, do you evaluate things that way where you say, hey, this was good, I should keep doing this on a, you know, NFL game week basis?
You're bringing me into proprietary territory here. But I will say that there were times at The Athletic that you could see with stories I would write, I could see some of those translations. I don't see that stuff anymore. But yeah, there was a time you could do that, and sometimes it made sense. And sometimes you're like, really? This is the one that everybody liked? So it's hard. You know, I remember traveling somewhere to do a story. I mean, I was fortunate enough, they traveled me to go do this profile of this player, and I was so excited for it. And I sat down with this story, and I put so much into it, and it brought in like, the number of subscribers it brought in did not translate. And the next week, I think I did 10 free agents the Bears should consider, and suddenly, so it's tough. But yeah, my boss's bosses are able to see those things, and that can trickle down to editors who can say, hey, this story did well in this regard. Maybe you can do something like it. And the nice thing about The Athletic is James can write a Colts article that they could say, hey, can you do something like this with the Bears? And I would say only James Boyd can do that. Yeah, so we do have some numbers like that allow us to try to be more efficient, to your question.
On3 is at the forefront of all the metrics and the pioneering in that way. I'm not privy to a lot of how they do that. And my boss, who is an independent publisher, he's basically a franchisee. I have my contract with him, so I make the same amount of money regardless, over the duration of that contract. Whereas my boss's, what he's bringing in per month is, more beholden to those fluctuations, and so he's paying a lot more attention, many times a day, to what works and what doesn't. But what works in covering college football is covering recruiting, which I, thank God, don't have to do. We have another writer who does that full time. Breaking news, just the beat stuff, and it doesn't even have to be necessarily here's the offensive coordinator they're going to hire. Which of course I'm chasing that as hard as I can, and I want to be first with that. But it could be, hey man, it's mid-June, and I'm hearing that the backup quarterback, that it's only a matter of time. But the coaches think it's only a matter of time before he takes over for the starter, the guy they've anointed sort of as the number one guy right now. Just information, like substance. And so one of my least favorite times of the year is August camp, because it's like 3 weeks of where you don't get to see much, but you have to. The thirst and the hunger from subscribers, because they've gone however many months without seeing anything or hearing anything that's actually happening. That's our busiest time of year in terms of subscriptions. We get more subscriptions in the run-up to the season than we do during the season itself. I don't really enjoy that part of it. I would much prefer writing about and analyzing what I'm seeing, but still, it's a big part of it. So there's a lot of this is abstract, I think, is what you're asking about. But a lot of it's pretty simple. Like, hey, what's your bread and butter? Ours is recruiting. And it's football. It's not going out there and covering college baseball games. It's not spinning your wheels doing stuff that's not going to generate subscriptions. So,
real quick to that, and not to go too far off topic, one of the funny things is for us in the NFL, free agency and draft are our biggest times of year. Yeah. Because hope is what you sell hope, and the lead up. I mean, we have big stories in training camp and preseason because of the lead up, and then and when the team is good or awful, you'll see it. But yeah, it is very funny that we're obviously talking about games and covering games, but that transactional time of year is because the fans are going to convince themselves that this free agent is going to be the guy that turns the team around.
Oh, and the transfer portal. That's huge. Yeah. I mean, fans just eat that up. And so you include that with the recruiting, the high school recruiting as well. So.
Yeah. I'm going to do the annoying thing here and ask a two-part question, which is really just two questions. That's what everyone does, right? So the first one is just more or less, I'm curious for both of you guys. Most writers before the digital age would have their stories written by the third quarter, the fourth quarter. You go through, you pretty much know how the game's going to go. Well, now with being occupied with Twitter or a live blog in-game, and there's so many other things that you're doing, are you still able to get the majority of your story written, or do you find yourself doing more of it on the back end? And then that's more of a curiosity thing. Second part, Kevin, I think it was you that said you're using Instagram a lot more. I'm just curious, what are some of the things that you've had success with on Instagram when covering games?
So I'll start writing my takeaway, that little 300-word thing. I'll start that. If it's a blowout, I'll start in the third, fourth quarter. For my actual game column, I won't touch that until I might think, I'll be sitting with my coworker and we'll be talking. But again, this is so hard. I got recency bias here because that Bears season was just like every single game came down to the last minute. So it was pretty insane in terms of that. But yeah, I usually don't actually start the story until I get back from the locker room. And then I'll answer your second question. I'm way late on starting a professional Instagram. I haven't even done it for games yet, but I realize I'm doing these videos at the games. I want a vehicle now to post that to my Instagram. And I've started to toy with it a little bit. How can I'm learning. I'm thinking I'm always taking a picture. I always take an empty stadium pic when I get there. I always, so little clips from press conferences I'll probably throw up there. Things I probably would have done in the old days of Twitter, really. I think I'll probably now bring to Instagram. So the short answer is I don't know yet. I'm gonna kind of tinker with it this fall. And that's vanity. Company didn't tell me to do it. I'm just trying to all right. Before they tell me to go on TikTok, which I tell every young person, be a master at TikTok, be an expert at TikTok. Because if you come to a company and you can take a game and spin it into a TikTok form, you can tell me via TikTok what happened in the game in a clever, creative way that young people are going to see on their phones, or if it's Instagram or Reel. I just can't do that. And I always tell people, when I started, Twitter had just begun. When I got to my first company, I was I'm going to be an expert at Twitter. So I always tell people, next stage, I think right now is TikTok, or it has been for the past year or two. That's what I would tell people to become an expert on. Be curious how people use that for games.
Sometimes you have to write early, depending on your situation, newspaper days, or if you even in these days, if you have to send something right away, of course you got to write some running stuff. But I can't think of any column or game story that I've been proud of that I haven't started just with a blank screen. And that pressure, it's so intimidating. But it's also a challenge that I issue to our interns who, hey man, don't start writing after that, second media timeout in the basketball game. Just look at the sideline, look at what observe. You might see something learn something, that you might ask about. And so challenge yourself to wait until the end, until you have that blank screen, and it usually flows better because maybe this is just me. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to be able to rearrange stuff, but it just gets clunkier. You're like, oh, where do I put that? Oh, and that, but I've already, and then you have second reference issues and things like that, and so you might as well just start from scratch.
Yeah, real nerdy process thing is like I'll transcribe everything first and put it in one Google Doc. And then I will write the dateline, so Chicago or wherever I am, and then I'll usually go take a walk. Sometimes I started doing that this year. Just take a walk and kind of see, and then I'll sit down and I'll stare at that blank screen for a little while, and then it just starts to flow.
Nice. We got another question.
Yeah, I feel like I'm wrapping up. Shout out Kevin. Look great up there, by the way. Kevin and Larry, I do want to ask. It's good. A lot of young people in the room, and I know Twitter doesn't matter, at least not like it used to, but the question I have is, like, what's the balance between you have to build your brand, you have to build some sort of following, people have to know who the heck you are to want to follow your work or subscribe to The Athletic or subscribe to, what you have going on with the Clemson. So what's the balance that you all have found in doing that, especially when you're younger or trying to get to a place where your voice actually kind of gets recognized on a beat? Because I had to experience that myself. Like, if I don't tweet something, they never going to see who the heck I am. So, yeah, what's your advice there?
Yeah, it's hard. It's why I can't get rid of Twitter. I mean, and I like that James is talking about the young people because I call James the young people. He's the young guy at the Athletic that's crushing it. No, it's true, and that's why I try to keep my Twitter. As I said earlier, I was fortunate that I have built a pretty solid follower base, and a lot of that was by tweeting during games. I found that my live tweets in games brought the most engagement. And so I'm just kind of hoping, I'm like, that's enough people. I don't need to and actually that's why I started on Blue Sky a lot. I'm posting on Blue Sky more. I post on Blue Sky the way I would have on Twitter in 2014. And James, to your question, that's also why I started the Instagram. I'm trying to all right, I understand that we all got to brand ourselves a little bit more. And it's hard for, I guess I came up in this era of we're not the story. It's not about us. But now when you see the landscape we're in, you're right. People do want to, and Larry, to your point about the subscribers, these people are paying, they want to get to know who we are. So I'm trying to get more comfortable, and that's why I started the Instagram. It's I feel like I'm more comfortable posting a video of myself on Instagram than I would be on Twitter I don't really know I don't have a good reason for it, but just feels like that app is better used for that. But you're right. We do have to have this balance of trying to continue to brand ourselves, but you also want to give back to the people who are paying.
I'm 51 years old. I've been covering the same team since 2004. It's really easy for me to say what I've said about. So don't listen to. You're totally different, right? So I would say my advice would be, and I'm probably a dinosaur on all the TikTok and stuff like that. I would say this: the most important thing in 2004, to me, remains the most important thing in 2026 as far as building your brand, making a name for yourself. Develop relationships and break news, be an authority. And you can do it, regardless of how old you are. It takes time. It takes the right decisions. How much am I going to gain for this piece just ripping this offensive coordinator to shreds, for a play call? Is it more about the long game of, okay, if I just tone it down a little bit here, is it going to help in the long run? There are a million of those decisions over the course of years, but I think that you can. That's what I tell my interns all the time, college kids, as they're asking me for advice on how do I make a name for myself. You'll make a name for yourself, regardless of what medium it is. If you can tell people stuff before anybody else can, and wherever AI is going, I don't know, but AI is not going to be able to talk to somebody, behind the scenes and develop trust in a relationship.
It's well done. Well done. Round of applause for these guys, Kevin and Larry, and appreciation for their time.
Thank you.
Excellent stuff, guys. Thank you. And we'll take 5 here before our next session begins.